So there's one big news in gaming recently, actually not recently, one big news in gaming since yesterday, which was Helldiver 2. Helldiver 2 issue was a big drama in Helldiver 2, where they announced yesterday on May 3rd that a link to a PSN account is now required. And that caused a big issue to a lot of players. One thing is because of because a lot of players doesn't feel good having to link a third-party account. So that I can see that a lot of let's say long-time fans or people who have put in like hundreds of hours have put in negative reviews, and I believe Pirate Software even said they're gonna ask for refund, even though I don't think Steam will give it to him, but he did ask for it and he's gonna stand on it. And because of how Helldiver change of tune, and I think even in their FAQs they are changing. They're even changing what they say about mandatory PSN links. I guess when the game first launched, from at least from what I gathered, when the game first launched, there was a period. I guess it was one day, just for the first day. It was kind of a requirement for Steam users to link their PSN, and then it was deactivated, probably because due to launch issues and some sort of server issue. So now Sony is once again reinforcing linking to PSN. Yeah, so that caused a lot of issues too. One thing is that a lot of players, probably from countries that you cannot have PSN, right? I don't play Helldiver, especially when it first came out. Just the initial hype of the game, I didn't play it. To me, it doesn't look that interesting. I know that a lot of players probably have a different opinions about this, but I don't find the game that interesting. But the thing is that I have a lot of friends that actively plays Helldiver too, right? So they have sunk in hundreds of hours, where one of them was like, I think they've been playing since morning to some 3-4 a.m. on a daily basis when they first came out. Which I understand it, right? Don't get me wrong, it's a good game. It is a very good game. It's really well made game. There are some really cinematic moments within the game, and the memes are great. The CEO is very good. CEO is a very likable person and also very based. Right? A lot of people like the game. I understand that. It's just that at that time I was playing a lot of Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, which, okay, well, it's a gacha game, but the Relink itself, it's a good game. It's a good game. I also sink a lot of hours in, and I prefer that kind of game over Helldiver. I wasn't in it, but yeah, I mean, a lot of my friends are very big into Helldivers too, which comes the issue, right? I asked one of them about what they think of the news, and they were surprised that this popped up now, which is weird. And what she explained to me was that she didn't know. She always thought PSN was a requirement, right? She didn't know it was actually optional. And I think a lot of players, if she thinks like that, I would say an average player, right? Then I think a lot of players will actually think of the same way. And how much would this actually affect the mentality of the player that constantly play the game? I actually don't know. Even though there are some really big streamers, really big YouTubers that have made the news out of this, but how much would this affect Helldiver 2? We'll have to wait and see, depending on how people perceiving this news, right? And how many people actually knows what is happening. Because my friend, she doesn't know, and I bet I bet there's a lot of players like her that doesn't know. Why? Because she doesn't keep up with gaming news. Even though it is really huge, but she doesn't really keep up with gaming news. She likes the game, of course, but the thing is that she has a job. She has a full-time job, and she also teaches. So that a lot of people just play games just to wind down. So they don't really keep up some sort of gaming news. So which is understandable. And especially if you look at closely, right? I've been tracking the overall reviews for Helldiver. Currently, Helldiver 2 is sitting at a close to 92k negative reviews in the past 30 days. I'm pretty sure it came from the last 2 days, which it shows on the recent reviews. So the last two, just from last 2 days, right? And if you think about it, okay, 92k, that's a lot of numbers. That surely will impact the current player base, right? Which is actually not the case, right? I'm looking at right now. I'm looking at Steam. I'm looking at SteamDB. Currently, the player are still sitting around over 100k players right now, right? And you're thinking that, oh, is that a lot of people? Actually, it is a lot of people, right? You think that's a lot of people? Actually, it's a lot of people. All-time peak for Helldivers 2, 458k, right? Okay, you think that's a huge drop, but the thing is that you have to think about the natural life cycle of a game, right? Especially some sort of online live service game, which is understandable that once player have like pretty much done everything they could, the player base would drop to, after the initial hype, it dropped to like a steady rate, right? So if you look at closely to the moment they announce the account linking update, which it shows on SteamDB, and at the low and how what the game is performing now, it's already been it's already past like 1 day, right, after the announcement, and now the actual player number doesn't change, right? Around the announcement, we're sitting at a daily peak of 115, 120k. The day after the announcement, we're still sitting at 120k and 120k, right? And that kind of just make you think, what happened to the 91k negative reviews? Are they active players? I think so, right? If you look at some of the review numbers, there are people with a lot of hours in the game. But why is the number of players concurrently is still the same, right? So who are these active players right now? So there could be two things, right? I think the major thing is that people who left negative reviews, they actually just don't care, right? Even if they left negative reviews, say they're not gonna stop playing the game or anything like that, they will still playing the game. They're still playing the game. I think that could be a majority. That could be a majority of the players. I don't know. I cannot say that for sure. And at the same time, there's a lot of players, just like my friend, who doesn't even know this news, right? Who doesn't keep up with gaming news, what's happening. They will just still keep playing the game. And I'm sure that this number is also worldwide. How other country getting this news regarding Helldivers 2, I don't know that yet. You know, for example, China, I don't know how China's getting news, or some people, or players in Europe. Have they gotten this news yet? Have they gotten this update yet? I'm pretty sure that since China, you cannot make a PSA in China, and that's a lot. That I bet there's a huge player base in China, right? And how they perceive this news is gonna change this graph dramatically once they receive it, or once this is actually reinforced. So that's gonna be an interesting look on the future of the game, that's for sure. But yeah, I mean, let me just refresh it and let me see it. Player right now still sitting around a comfortable over 100k concurrent players. So it just makes you wonder. And especially right now, this is not the first, I would say, a screw up by Sony part, right? Like right before this, it was the whole Cellar Blaze censorship, and that was a huge blow to player trust towards Sony. And now the reinforcing third-party account on Helldivers 2. You know, like people will say that, oh, Sony collecting data, which is, I agree, Sony definitely collects data, and depending on, nobody knows how they use the data. Most likely they will sell it, right? That's very common. They collect data and sell it to marketing or some sort of marketing companies. Doesn't matter. Okay, and a lot of people are worried about that, which is understandable. And also the Cellar Blaze thing. I don't know why the censorship. You know, to me it seems very tamed. To me it seems very tamed. It seems very understandable, especially coming from a company that may need K. Okay, they may need K. I mean, if you're going to partner up with a company that made Nikkei, you should probably expect a certain things happening in the game. Which, I mean, I guess as a company, there's a certain front you gotta keep up, but you should know who you're working with, the history or the type of game they will make. And people are saying that, oh, what happened to Sony? They used to be better. They used to be like this, the golden age of Sony from the PSP and PS3 era, and there were so many even more outrageous games back then. I think a lot of people doesn't know, but Sony Entertainment, the gaming department, it's not Japanese anymore. The headquarters moved to US a couple years ago, right? Let me see how many years ago. I don't even know anymore. I think they moved, some most likely say 2016. So it's already been well, no, not even 6 years anymore. It's already been 8 years. 8 years Sony has been in US, right? And it's in California. And you think about like the game that the headquarters, like the gaming headquarters that is in California, and especially the whole, before this it was the whole Sweet Baby stuff happening, then you can see that, okay, maybe that's why Sony Games has been doing something like this. It is no longer a Japanese gaming company, essentially. It's a US publisher. That's the key, right? But don't get me wrong, I mean, like Japanese gaming, they have issues too, right? You look at Nintendo and the whole Pokemon and Pal World kind of stuff. Like the Japanese corporate sphere is also have a lot of issues compared to what Sony is now. You could argue that it could be better, right? You could make an argument that if Sony stay in Japan, it will be a lot better and a lot more, essentially more free, right? In terms of crackdowns on censorship and enforcements, compared to having Sony based in US now as a US publisher. No matter what, we just have to wait and see how they handle it. Especially not just this, right? Especially how the community manager for Helldivers 2 handled this. A lot of these issues is not how it happened. It's mostly how it was perceived, right? If this happened, you know, Helldivers 2, the community just said that we're really sorry to the players that have been affected by this, and some most likely this is out of their control anyway. And since this is most likely a part of a contract that it's been enforced by Sony, there's nothing they can probably. There's not, honestly, there's nothing they can do to stop this anyway. So if the I would say the community manager was just say that, which I'm pretty sure that most players will understand it, right? It is like something that's enforced by Sony, which is true. Pretty sure it is off their hands, which is also true. Okay. Also like part of the contract, since it was supposed to happen on day one anyway. It was just that something going on, that's why they didn't enforce it. So which is also true. So we just outright and say that, I'm sure that more players will be understanding of it, and they wouldn't have that much of an impact on the reviews of the game as it is now, which is sitting at 92k. But what the community manager actually said is that it only takes 2 minutes to make a PSN account, or somewhere around those lines. It was somewhere around those lines. Basically, he was saying that even though it's like this, you know, PSN doesn't really take that much time, and then setting up an account does only take 2 minutes. That is just a piss poor response, right? And a lot of players can feel that way too, right? You're basically shifting the blame onto the player base, which is never a good idea for a company or game dev or whatever, or publisher, right? Never shifting your blame to the consumers of something that is happening on your end, right? That doesn't make any sense. I'm pretty sure that the devs, they just want to make a good game, which you can tell, right, from all the things they did, from different like how they handle the purchasing, how they handle a lot of in-game stuff. You can tell that they have a lot of love to the game and you the players. But people will remember this instead. You know, this is what people will remember, and especially the response from the community manager. That's what people will remember, and not the good you do. And but this is something that the player will remember. That's my thoughts on the whole situation, I guess. Yeah, just have to wait and see what happens.